dual method by like switching our thing actually. Like in normal simplex method, we first chose entering variable, but now we
Hmm.
first choose leaving variable actually. And then
So that is the
corresponding to
dual,
that,
that is dual simplex method. That is
okay.
dual simplex method which we have discussed. Now I'm
Yeah.
asking, what is primal dual algorithm? Primal dual algorithm.
We first apply dual simplex to get to a solution of the primal, and then the optimize it, get the optimal solution by applying the primal method.
Right. So, so when you reach feasibility at the end of dual simplex, you might observe for certain problems that the objective row is not optimal, right? So you have not reached optimality. You may have got a feasible solution for the primal, but you have not reached the optimality. So then you apply the primal simplex algorithm as usual to reach to the optimality, right? So when you start from infeasibility, you are talking about dual simplex to remove infeasibility and get to a feasible solution. And then when you have a feasible solution but not optimal, then you will apply the primal simplex algorithm, right? So let us see an example of that. Then you can. Yeah. So this is an example of primal dual simplex. So suppose if your LP is of this, is given like this, max z, and then subject to these constraints, right? So you see that this is in non-standard form because you have greater than equal to constraint, right? So you decide to apply dual simplex method first, right? So when you write the first table of simplex by multiplying it with -1, the first constraint by -1, then you get this table, which is an infeasible one, isn't it? Because you have -8 here, so this is infeasible. So when you have a starting infeasible solution, you have to apply dual simplex method, right? So you apply dual simplex and go to the next iteration where you see this table where see the right hand side are all positive, so which is feasible, right? But if you look at this objective row, which tells you whether it is optimal or not, you see a -2 here. So which means this objective row is non-optimal. But you cannot apply dual simplex here because you already got a feasible solution. So dual simplex is not applicable anymore, right? Uh, so then in order to find the optimal solution, you just use this table as your given initial PFS, right? And then apply the primal simplex to reach optimality. So in this case, you will choose X3 to enter and then you will perform the minimum ratio test, right? And choose X5 to leave. So in the normal manner, you apply the primal simplex and you get the optimal solution, right? So because you are applying dual simplex and primal simplex both for this problem in order to get the optimal and feasible solution, this algorithm is known as primal dual algorithm. Okay. Now, see, we have seen uh, now different variants of simplex. There is no other variant, right? So if it is given in standard form, which gives you a directly a feasible solution as origin, Then you apply the primal simplex method. If it is in non-standard form, you have this two-phase method and BGAN method, right? Alternatively, you can apply the dual simplex method, and which is actually preferable, more preferred, because it helps, it avoids the introduction of new variables, new artificial variables in the system, right? And then you also know about the revised simplex method. Revised simplex method is actually nothing but the matrix form of all these methods, right? So when you represent these tables in the form of matrix, in the notations of matrix algebra, then we call it revised simplex method. So as such, it is not anything new. Okay, it is just an alternative representation, right? We have seen that in the graphical sensitivity analysis, where we have given an example of this interior paint and exterior paint problem, right? Ready-mix model, if you recall it. So we have plotted the constraints, the feasible region, right? The objective, the optimal solution in the graph, and then we have checked that if we change the profits associated with the products, or if we change the availability of the raw materials, then how the objective functional value and the optimal solution are going to change, right? These we have observed graphically, and we have made certain observations, and we have come across some terms like range of feasibility, range of optimality, right? So can someone tell me what is range of feasibility? What is range of feasibility? Can someone tell me? This is already discussed, range of optimality and range of feasibility.
Like one equation within what range we can like shift, like I'm telling graphically, so that the current solution still remains feasible.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Means like if we have a constant, so that b value by how much we can shift, so that the current range becomes like the current solution still be feasible actually.
No, that is not the definition of range of feasibility. Range of feasibility is, say, for a particular raw material, the right hand side is that range for which all the constraints remain valid or remain functional. No constraint becomes redundant, right? But your objective, but your optimal solution will change definitely. So what was your earlier optimal solution may not be even feasible now, right? So for example, if we go back, this one, right? So this one gives you the range of feasibility for M1, the raw material, right? So you see, so C, initially C was the optimal solution here. So as you increases the raw material M1, this C will slide downward, okay? And up to this point C2. Beyond which, if you further increase your resource M1, that constraint related to M1 will become redundant. Fine. Similarly, if you decrease it, it will, slide upward. So suppose if C is here, so this M1 constraint will be here, right? So earlier C was the optimal solution. So now C is even not feasible. It is infeasible now. It is outside feasible region, right? So the definition of the feasibility range of feasibility for a particular resource is that range for which all the constraints remain functional or remain active or in full force, right? No constraint becomes redundant, isn't it? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Similarly, we have also seen the range of optimality, which is this one, range of optimality. So the objective function was like this, right? And you can tilt it within this range without changing the optimal solution. So this corner point will remain optimal in this range of objective function, right? Of course, the objective value will change, but the solution, this corner point, will remain the same as the optimal solution, isn't it? Clear? So now in the 2-dimension, we have seen the how to do it, how to find the range of optimality and range of feasibility. The question arises how to do it for larger dimensions, right? Because there you cannot plot it in a graph. So you need a numerical approach to compute these ranges of optimality and ranges of feasibility for a given LP. So now we will discuss. Now we are, familiar with these different versions of simplex, the interpretations of the dual, right, and also this dual simplex. So now we will be able to compute these ranges numerically for larger problems where you cannot plot it in a graph and decide, right? Now, these are the 4 thumb rules, as we say it, in the sensitivity analysis or post-optimal analysis. So why it is called post-optimal or sensitivity analysis? Because one thing is that you are given a problem and then you apply simplex and get a solution. So that is about finding the optimal solution. Now, after finding the optimal solution, you may be interested to know that if you change certain parameters of the system, right, of your given problem, then how your objective value and optimal solution is going to be affected. So this is why it is called post-optimal analysis or sensitivity analysis, right? So far we have understood that if we change certain parameters of the given problem, and the current solution remains optimal and feasible. So you have found an optimal solution and then you change certain parameters, like it may be objective values, it may be right hand side, it may be any other thing. But still this current solution, which you are the current corner point, which you have obtained, if it remains optimal and feasible, then no further action is needed, right? Because you have the same optimal solution. You don't need to recompute it. Fine. This is well understood and easy to understand also, right? The second point is the current solution becomes infeasible. So with certain changes in parameters, say the current optimal solution becomes infeasible because you might have changed certain values in such a way that the feasibility region itself has changed and the current optimal solution now is outside that feasible region, right? It may happen. So the current optimal solution will become an infeasible solution. for that case. And now you have to find the new optimal solution. So you know that if you are given an infeasible solution, then you know how to find the optimal solution. How? By applying the dual simplex method, because you are given an initial infeasible solution, right? Second point is clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Then the third point is, with some changes in the parameters it may happen, the current solution becomes non-optimal. So it remains feasible. It remains feasible. That means the right hand side, the values of the basic variables, they're all positive or zero, right? So it remains feasible, but it becomes non-optimal, which means that the objective row has changed its signs. Some has become negative maybe. So rendering it to a non-optimal table, right? So earlier it was optimal table with changes in certain parameters. Now the table has become non-optimal. So what to do? You need to find the new optimal solution. So you have the feasible solution and non-optimal objective row. So you know how to do it by applying primal simplex method, which is the basic and well-known method. Now, in some cases, it may happen that with the changes in some parameters, the current solution becomes non-optimal and infeasible both. So in the right hand side, you have negative, right, small b, negative, and then not a small b, the b inverse b in the right hand side, and you have non-optimal objective. That means some negative signs are there in the objective row as well. So in that case, you will apply primal dual algorithm in the sense that you will first try to remove infeasibility from the solution, get to an initial DFS, and then you apply the primal simplex to find the optimal solution. Okay, so these 4 thumb rules will be required to do post-optimal or sensitivity analysis, or in fact to compute those ranges of feasibility and ranges of optimality. So let us see one by one how to do this. So we are taking the an old example, which is the Toyco, toy manufacturing company, right, where these X1, X2, X3, there's a toy train, toy trucks, and toy cars, right? Objective function is given, which is some associated with some profit values 3 to 5, and then some availability constants are given for the operation 1, 2, and 3, right? If you recall this example, right? So this was the Toyco example, and if we apply the simplex methods, this is in standard form, so we can apply simplex and we get this optimal solution, which tells us that it is not, you should produce 100 units of toy trucks and 230 units of toy cars to achieve the maximum profit, and you should not produce any toy trains, right? X1 is 0. If we take its dual and solve it, we get these values, which again means that y1 equal to 1 means what? That if you increase the capacity of the operation 1 by 1 unit at the right hand side, your profit is going to jump by 1 unit. Similarly, we can explain for y2 and y3. Okay, so these are the unit worth of resources or shadow prices of the resources. Resources here are in terms of the time, availability time for particular operation, right? So these all we have seen. Now the question is that when you solve it, you get this table, right? Simplex, you just apply the simplex on this Toyco, this primal problem, and so this was the table. This is the table which you get at the end of it. This one is the table, right? This one. So this was is the final simplex table which you get, okay, for Toyco. isn't it? Now, what I try to understand from here is yeah. So if this table is given and then I used to make certain changes in the right hand side, which is the availability. Say daily capacity increased by 40% for each line. For each operation, we have increased the daily capacity by 40%. So we essentially change this small b. This small b is being changed. So now this small b, new values are this, right? We want to see that what is its effect on the optimal solution. How to do that? The final table is given, which is this. This one is the final table, right? So how to do that? How to get to the new optimal solution? Is the question clear? We started with some small b, which are the right hand capacities. Now we have changed it. We have increased it by 40%. Now we want to see that what is my new optimal solution. How to do that? How to check? One thing is that one straightforward way would be to resolve the entire thing, by simplex, and you get the optimal solution. That is a brute force way of doing it, right? But using the the knowledge that you have, how you can use the current optimal solution table to find the new optimal solution. Anybody? Hello.
We can do B inverse B. We can do B inverse B, sir. B inverse will be the coefficient of slacks.
So we can do B inverse B. So B inverse B is the values of the basic variables, right? XB. So from where I'll get the B inverse?
Coefficient of slacks from the table.
Coefficients of slacks from the table, which turns out this, right? So this is the B inverse. So from that final table, I can get what is the current B inverse, right? And then this new B has been changed from the old values to these new 602, 644 and 488, and we get this solution. So if we keep the same base, the idea is, if we keep the same base as the current optimal solution, with the changed values of a small b, we get this solution, the values of the basic variables. Right? Is this a feasible solution or not? For the new problem, that means with the changed small b value. Is this a feasible solution? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, why?
All positive coefficients.
All positive, right? All positive. So this is a feasible solution. Is it an optimal solution?
Yes, because the first row will be still non-negative.
That means will be unaffected.
Yeah,
because we have changed small b, and if we look at the first row of the simplex method, it is 1, then CB, B inverse A minus C and CB B inverse, right? So small b is not affecting the first row. So which means it remains unaffected. So for the current optimal solution, it was already optimal, and for the new one also it will be optimal. So moment we get a feasible solution here for this problem, we also say hence it is also optimal. Right? Do you all agree with me or not? So it is all coming from this, matrix form of the simplex method, right? 0, B inverse A and B inverse. And in the right hand side is what? CB B inverse B and B inverse B. Right? So this B inverse B, so because a small b is changed, objective value will be affected and the right hand side will be affected. But the table as such, if we keep the same base, capital B, it will not be affected. Only the right hand side will get affected. And we are seeing that it will be feasible. And so we are declaring it will be optimal also. Right? Now the question is, regarding the change in the right hand side, we are already familiar with one term, which is range of feasibility, right? So how much we can change so that the current base remains optimal. The current base remains optimal.
Sir.
How much you can change?
Sir.
Excuse
me, sir. I had a doubt.
Yeah.
Sir, here this B is coefficient of basic variables or coefficient of slack variables?
Which B?
Here, sir, B inverse, this one.
B inverse?
Because in revised simplex, we used to take coefficient of basic variables and then inverse it, right? So
but if you look at, you don't have to do that.
Same, no?
Yeah, you don't have to do that. If you look at the matrix form of the simplex method, what is matrix form? 1, 0, CB B inverse A minus C and B inverse A, then CB B inverse and then B inverse, right? These are for original variables, these are for slack variables, right? Okay. So now where is the B inverse? B inverse here. So in any table, you take any table and you look at the coefficients of the slack variables in the constant set. You will get B inverse. So you don't have to particularly look at the base and take its inverse. Right?
Okay, sir.
If you do that, you will get the same B inverse. And this is what was taught in your revised simplex method. Okay. So B inverse can be directly read from any table by just reading out the coefficients of the slacks associated in the constant set, isn't it? Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now the question is that how much you can change. For example, I am giving you another example related to this problem. See here, this was the final table, this was the final table, right? Current optimal table. So here we observe that X2 is 100, that means 100 number of toy trucks and 230 number of toy cars to be produced, right? And X6 is 20. What is the meaning of this? X6 is 20. What is X6? X6 is the slack associated with the third constraint, right?
Yes, sir.
So which means 20 units of operation 3 availability is unused, right? Right or wrong?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now, suppose we want to, because we know that 20 units are lying unused, we want to check whether we can transfer it profitably to some other operation. So initially my small b values were this, right? 450, 460 and 400. What I do, 20 units of 400 we are transferring to 450. So if you do that, what happens? So initially what was a small b? Small b was 430. So when you look at this, the original problem, right? 460 and 420. Now 20 units have been transferred to this. So now it has become 450. 460 is 460 and 420 is 400, right? So this is the new b, right? So this is the new b. This was the old b, right? And if you check b inverse b with this new small b, you get this 110, 230 and minus 40, which is infeasible solution. What does it mean? That the current base is infeasible, right? Current basic solution that you are getting, will be getting with this base, will be infeasible. Right?
Yes, sir.
And how do we define the range of feasibility? You see, if I draw here, for that raw material problem, what was it like? Sorry. Say if I draw like this, and if I try to increase or decrease this particular constraint, right? What happens? This corner point, so it becomes it slides down through this constraint, right? So either it moves up or it slides down. So what does it mean? The base is not changing. The corner point will be defined by the same base, right? Same base means the non-basic variables will still be the same for that corner point, which is sliding up and down along with that constant. The moment it becomes here, suppose if I consider a point here or some other corner point, the base is changing, right? So range of feasibility is actually defined as that range where your current base remains optimal. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And when that will happen, how can you condition it that the current base remains optimal with the new small b?
If none of the previous constants are redundant.
But here mathematically, how you can put that condition that the current base is the optimal? The new base, the current base will remain optimal even if the changed small b. How can you put that condition?
Non-negative slacks. Value of slack should be non-negative.
No. Listen to my I want to express mathematically that the current base will remain feasible and optimal for the changed small b. So how to put this statement mathematically? What is current base for this example, say? Current base is x2, x3, x6. This is actually strongly written x2, x3 and x6. x2, x3, x6 is the current base, right? It will remain feasible and optimal with the changed small b. How do I ensure that?
If B inverse, the changed small b is greater than 0, then it will remain feasible.
Very good. Yes. Because these values, this is nothing but B inverse B. And I am changing this small b. So whatever may be the value of a small b, as long as B inverse small b is greater than equal to 0, then I'll have the current base as the feasible and optimal one. If it is not, like for example here you see minus 40, so it becomes infeasible. So from this condition we will be able to calculate the ranges of feasibility, that for what dimension, for what ranges of small b, this B inverse small b remains greater than equal to 0. Is that clear? Suppose for this instance, with this new small b I am getting minus 40, which is infeasible solution. So how to get to the optimal solution, new optimal solution now? How to get to the new,
Dual simplex we can do.
Dual simplex, right? So you have this table now where your right hand side is now changed this, right, minus 40. So now you want to find the optimal solution. So you observe that this is an optimal row, objective row, and infeasible right hand side. So you apply dual simplex. Those 4 thumb rules you must remember, right? The 4 thumb rules. So you apply dual simplex and you get the optimal solution for this, which is this one. Right, which is this one. This one is optimal also as well as feasible. And you observe that now x2 is 100, x3 is 230 and x4 is 20. What is x4? X4 is the slack for the first operation, right? So we had transferred 20 units from the third to first in the hope that we can increase the profit, or it will be utilized in the first operation. But when you compute the optimal solution for the changed small b, you see that these 20 units are anyway lying unused there also, and your profit, you see, objective value is not also changing, it is still remaining 1350. Right. Now
Yes,
formally, yes, tell me.
I'm telling it's not changing. Yeah.
It's what?
It's not changing optimal.
It's not changing, right? It's not changing. But we hoped that it would change, but so in operation 1 also is not using it in the optimal solution for this case. Okay. Now we formally define this feasibility range of RHS based on these observations. So where we have seen that B inverse B must be greater than equal to 0. So initially the small b was 430, 460 and 420. Now we are interested to see the range of, say, the first resource. So so 430 plus D1. Now I am interested to know what is this range of D1 for which the current basis remains optimal, and that will give me the feasibility range of this first resource. That is the operation 1 availability. So we simply put it in B inverse B and we get this B inverse B, right, greater than equal to 0. So this is the condition so that the current basis remains optimal. And when you break down these conditions, you will see that D1 is coming between minus 200 to 10. What does it mean? If you increase the capacity of operation 1 by 10 units, up to 10 units, the current basis remains optimal. Similarly, if you decrease it by up to 200 units, the current basis remains optimal. If you do beyond this, then your base will change. That means you have to compute a new base for the optimal solution. The current base will be infeasible. Then you have to apply dual simplex and compute the new optimal solution, new optimal base. Is this clear? So see, this is a numerical approach of finding the feasibility range of a particular resource. Now you can also think of doing it, for multiple resources, say D1 and D2. So suppose I want to also understand the feasibility range of both first resource and the second resource. Then I'll write 460 plus D2 and I'll write the similar constraints, right? And then we'll form equations, some conditions will be there on both combination of D1 and D2. So if you choose the value of D1, D2 in a manner that those conditions are satisfied, then this current basis will remain optimal. Clear or not?
Clear, sir.
Yes. And we know that the unit worth of a resource, which is the shadow price or the dual price, that is the value of the dual variables associated with the particular resource, is valid only within the feasibility range. So we have computed the D1 is between -200 and 10. So which means for the resource 1, what is the range of feasibility? For resource 1, what is the range of feasibility?
-200 to 10.
Yeah, 230, and 230 is the minimum value and maximum value is 440, right?
Yes, sir.
So this is the range of feasibility for resource 1, that is operation 1. Feasibility, range of feasibility. And what is the unit worth of resource for operation 1? That is Y1, the value of the dual variable Y1, right? Shadow price, what is that? So that comes from the dual of the problem, right? And what is that? Tell me, what is that, Y1?
Change in value of the amount profit divided by the feasibility range.
No, but we have computed, no? We have shown you what is the value of Y1 for this problem.
0.75, I guess.
No, this is for this problem, it was 1. Right. You see these here. You see this was the dual, and the dual solution is 0.75 was for another problem. Ready mix model. This is Stoichkov problem. Okay. Y1 equal to 1. So this Y1 equal to 1. So you can increase your profit by changing the operation 1 availability up to 10 units, that means up to 440, and your jump of profit will be $1 per unit increase of Y1, right? Yeah. So this is what is discussed in this slide. So how to get those dual values 1 to 0? So which means this d1 y. So y1 is 1 is valid within this range. Okay. So tomorrow we'll discuss the addition of a new constraint and then the range of optimality. So today we have seen that how to decide on the range of feasibility. Graphically, we can see for the two-dimensional problem. For higher dimension problems, what is the method? Method is very simple. It is just B inverse B is greater than or equal to 0. That's it. Nothing else. And it makes sense also, right? So these slides have been uploaded in your MS Teams. So I want you to go through this once again and also read about this addition of a new constraint. How to add a new constraint. So suppose I have 3 constraints and I want to add an additional constraint, 4th constraint. Then how I recompute the optimal solution from the old base, current optimal solution. You have to explain it to me tomorrow. I can pick anybody in order to explain it to me. Everything is given. You can see all these things. So you try to go through this slide and understand on your own, so that so that when I ask you, you'll be able to explain it to me that how this is being done. Okay. Any question?
Hello, sir.
Tell me.
Yes, sir. I had a doubt in dual simplex method.
Theory
Sir,
of
what we
simplex
do?
method.
What should we? No, sir. Dual simplex, sir.
Dual simplex, yes.
Sir, what should we do in case of equal to constraint?
Can anybody answer? Can anyone answer this question, that when you have equations in the problem, how do you apply dual simplex method?
We can keep 2 equivalent equations, one greater than equal to and another less than equal to.
Right. And
then add appropriate slack and surplus variables and then do the dual simplex.
no, here surplus variables are not needed.
Okay.
You just simply multiply -1 for the greater than equal to constraint, right? Make it less than equal to.
Yeah, fine.
Okay. Is your question answered or not? Have you got it?
No, sir. In case of equal to constant, sir. Like
Equal to constant.
we have
That's what I'm
equation.
saying. Okay. Let me see. Let me discuss this here. Is it visible? Open board is visible or not? It's not visible, I think.
No, sir.
Is this visible now?
It's visible.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So say you have 3x1 plus 5x2 equal to 8 as one of the constraints. Then how to apply dual simplex on it, right? That is your question, right?
Yes, sir.
You can represent the same as a set of 2 equations. 5x2 less than equal to 8 and 3x1 plus 5x2 is greater than equal to 8. These two together is the same as saying that's equal to 8, right? Now, less than equal to, you don't have to do anything. The greater than equal to, what you do, you multiply it with -1. Then you get -3x1 minus 5x2 is less than equal to -8. So all the other, constraint 1, 2, 3, all these other constraints are there. And then instead of considering this directly, you consider this less than equal to and this less than equal to, which is -8. Clear?
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.